Welcome back to Prime Wealth. We're so glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We've got a really interesting topic lined up for you today.
Absolutely. So today we're diving into the 50/30/20 budget rule, which, if you haven't heard of it, is a super practical way to manage your money.
Right? It's all about how to allocate your income. Splitting it into needs, wants, and savings.
Exactly. And we're going to break it down with some real examples, so you can see how it works in everyday life.
Yeah, and we're not just throwing numbers at you. We'll share some relatable scenarios that, honestly, anyone can connect with.
Totally. Like, think about budgeting for groceries and fun stuff, while also saving for retirement. It can feel tricky, right?
For sure, but it doesn't have to be complicated. The 50/30/20 rule gives you a clear framework to work with.
And we'll also talk about how to adjust it based on your lifestyle, so it really feels doable for you.
Exactly. Plus, we've got some tips on avoiding common pitfalls.
So, if you're over 40 and looking to take control of your finances, you're in the right place.
All right, let's jump right in and start exploring this budgeting rule.
So, Alex, today we're diving into this budgeting method called the 50/30/20 rule. But, I really want us to focus on why this is super important for folks over 40,
Yeah, absolutely, Jordan. I think it's crucial to understand that at this stage in life, many people are really starting to think about their future, right? They might be looking at retirement planning, kids heading off to college, or even, caring for aging parents.
Exactly. And I've seen statistics that say, like, over 60% of people over 40 are worried about their financial security. That's a huge number, right?
It really is. And when you think about it, many of us are facing this perfect storm of financial pressures. You've got rising living costs, healthcare expenses, and if you're not budgeting effectively, it can feel really overwhelming.
Right. And that's where the 50/30/20 rule comes in. It's like this simple framework that can help people regain control, but I feel like many don't even know it exists.
Yeah, and that's a shame because it can make a huge difference. So for those who aren't familiar, it's basically about allocating 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. But it's not just about the numbers. It's about peace of mind.
Oh, totally. And I think it's especially relevant for people over 40 because, they might be at a point where they're reevaluating what they want out of life. Like, maybe they want to travel more or invest in experiences instead of just things.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I've had clients in their 40s and 50s who, after raising kids, suddenly find themselves with a bit more disposable income. They're feeling the urge to treat themselves, but if they don't have a plan, they can easily end up stressed about their finances.
That's so true. So can you share an example of, how someone might implement the 50/30/20 rule in real life?
Sure. Let's say we have someone named Mark, right? He's 45, married, kids are in high school, and he brings home about $6,000 a month.
Okay, cool. So how does Mark break that down?
Well, using the 50/30/20 rule, he'd allocate $3,000 for needs, like mortgage, groceries, utilities, and, insurance.
Makes sense. I mean, those are definitely the essentials.
Right. Then he'd set aside $1, $800 for wants. That could be things like dining out, a gym membership, or even the occasional vacation. It's important to include some enjoyment,
Definitely. Life's too short not to enjoy it a bit. And what about the savings part?
So he'd save $1, $200 a month. That could go into retirement accounts, an emergency fund, or even, a college fund for his kids. The key is to make sure he's not just living for today, but also planning for tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. It's about balance. And I think for a lot of people over 40, it can feel daunting to think about retirement savings when they're juggling so much already.
Exactly. And it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, I'll start saving later, but time is really of the essence. The earlier you start, the more you can benefit from compound interest.
Right. And I've heard that people often underestimate how much they need for retirement. Like, it's not just about having enough to live day to day, but being comfortable and enjoying those golden years.
Absolutely. And, I've seen people in their 40s struggling because they didn't start budgeting early enough or didn't prioritize saving. They end up feeling trapped in their jobs because they haven't built a nest egg.
That's so relatable. I mean, I can see how using a simple rule like 50/30/20ths could really help alleviate that pressure.
Right? And it's all about making small, consistent changes. It doesn't have to be an overhaul of your entire financial life overnight. Just little adjustments can lead to big results over time.
For sure. And I think, especially for listeners over 40, it's about shifting that mindset from surviving to thriving.
Yes. And when you have a clear budget like this, it gives you a sense of control, which is so empowering. You're not just reacting to life's expenses, you're deciding how to allocate your resources.
Love that. So, Alex, what do you think is a common misconception people have about budgeting at this stage in life?
I think a lot of people might feel like it's too late to start budgeting or saving. They think, I'm already in my 40s, what's the point? But, it's never too late to take control of your finances.
Exactly. And there are so many resources available now, whether it's apps, books, or podcasts, like ours.
Right. And it's about finding what works best for you. Budgeting doesn't have to be a chore. It can be a tool to help you live the life you want.
Well said. So I think we've set the stage pretty well for the importance of the 50/30/20ths rule.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive into some core strategies next. Let's help our listeners implement this in their daily lives.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Prime Wealth. Today we've got a really interesting topic that I think a lot of our listeners will find super helpful.
Absolutely, Jordan. We're diving into the 50/30/20ths budget rule, which is a simple yet effective way to manage your money, especially for those of us over 40.
Right? I mean, budgeting can feel so overwhelming sometimes, but this rule breaks it down into 3 easy categories. So, Alex, can you explain what the 50/30/20ths rule actually is?
Sure. So the idea is to divide your after-tax income into 3 main buckets. 50% goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings or debt repayment.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. When you say needs, what exactly do you mean?
Needs are the essentials, Things like housing, utilities, groceries, transportation, and healthcare. Basically, the stuff you can't live without.
Got it. And then for the wants, that's a bit more flexible, right?
Exactly. Wants are the things that make life enjoyable but aren't essential. Think dining out, vacations, hobbies. The fun stuff.
Ah, yes. I love that part. But then we have the savings and debt repayment part, right?
Right. So that 20% is super important. It's for building your emergency fund, saving for retirement, or paying down debt.
Speaking of savings, how do we actually start putting this into practice? It seems simple, but where do we even begin?
Great question. First, you need to know your after-tax income. That's the money you take home after taxes, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And then we can calculate how much fits into each category.
Exactly. So let's say you bring home $3,000 a month.
Ooh, I like this example. So what does that look like?
Okay, so for needs, you take 50% of $3,000, which is $1,500. This is what you should aim to spend on essentials.
And that sounds reasonable, but what if someone's needs are more than that?
Good point. If your needs exceed that 50%, you might need to take a hard look at your expenses, see if there are areas to cut back.
Right, maybe downsizing or shopping smarter for groceries.
Exactly. Now, for the wants, you take 30% of $3,000, which is $900.
So that's for all the extra fun stuff, like eating out or maybe a weekend getaway?
Yep, and it's important to enjoy life, but just be mindful of how much you're spending in this category.
And then we have the savings part, 20%, that's $600 in this example.
Right again. And that's where you'd want to focus on saving for emergencies, retirement accounts, or even paying down high-interest debt.
So if someone has credit card debt, they could prioritize that in their savings category, right?
Exactly. Paying off high-interest debt is a smart move. It can save you a lot of money in the long run.
Okay, but let's say someone's looking at their budget and they realize they're spending more than these percentages allow.
That's a common challenge, for sure. It's all about adjusting. You might need to shift some expenses around or reconsider what's a need versus a want.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for example, if someone's needs are too high, they could look into refinancing their mortgage or finding cheaper insurance.
Yes, those are great strategies. And even small changes can add up over time.
Now, what about those tools or habits that can help us stick to this budget?
There are plenty of budgeting apps out there, like Mint or YNAB, that can help you track these percentages easily.
Oh, I've heard of YNAB. You need a budget, right?
Exactly. It's a fantastic tool for visualizing your spending and making adjustments as needed.
And it's all about getting into the habit of checking in regularly, right?
Yes, regular check-ins are key. Maybe once a week or once a month, just to see how you're doing with those categories.
I can see how that would keep you accountable. But what if someone just forgets about their budget?
Well, that's where setting reminders can help, or maybe even finding an accountability partner who's also interested in budgeting.
Ooh, I like that idea. It's always more fun to do this kind of stuff with someone else.
For sure. And remember, it's a journey. It might take time to get used to this budgeting method.
Right. And if something doesn't work out, it's okay to adjust and try again.
Absolutely. Flexibility is important. Just keep your goals in mind and don't get discouraged if things don't go perfectly.
So, to wrap it up, the 50/30/20ths rule is a fantastic starting point for budgeting, especially for those of us who may feel a bit lost.
Exactly. And remember, it's all about finding balance and making sure your money works for you.
Yeah, and next week, we'll dive into some common pitfalls that people run into when trying to stick to this budget.
That's going to be really insightful. Lots of good stuff to share there.
For sure. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. We'll see you next time on Prime Wealth. All right, so we've talked about the 50/30/20ths budget rule, right? But, I think it's also really important to dive into some of the common pitfalls that people might face when they're trying to stick to this budgeting method.
Absolutely, Jordan. You know, it sounds simple, but it can get tricky. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people misclassifying their expenses.
Oh, for sure. Like, they might think they're spending less than they actually are, right?
Exactly. So a classic example would be someone who considers their gym membership a wants expense, when in fact it's more of a need if they're committed to their health.
Right! And then they might find themselves overspending in other areas because they've misallocated that budget.
Yes! And that can lead to a really frustrating situation, you know? They think they're following the 50/30/20ths rule, but, they're actually just digging themselves deeper.
So how can someone recognize that they're doing this? Like, are there any warning signs?
Well, one sign might be that they're constantly dipping into their savings, or using credit cards to cover those wants that they underestimated.
Oh yeah, that's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It really is. And then there's also the issue of not tracking their spending closely enough. People often assume they know where their money is going, but
do they really?
most of the time, they don't. So, for instance, someone might think they're spending, I don't know, $100 a month on dining out. But when they actually track it, it's more like $200 or $300.
Wow, that's a huge difference. So, what would you advise someone who finds themselves in that situation?
First, I'd say to start tracking expenses accurately. You know, apps can really help with that. But, also, just plain old pen and paper works too.
Yeah, whatever works best for them, right?
Exactly. And then, once they have a clearer picture, they can adjust their budget accordingly. Maybe they realize they need to cut back on dining out or find a more affordable gym membership.
Totally. And, like, how about another common pitfall? I've heard people say they struggle with impulse purchases.
Oh, for sure. Impulse buying can completely derail a budget. It's often the wants category that gets hit the hardest.
Right, so what might that look like in real life?
Well, I had a client who would regularly buy new tech gadgets, and they'd tell themselves it was a need because it was on sale. But when we looked closer, it was clear they were just accumulating stuff they didn't really use.
So it's kind of like a cycle, isn't it?
Exactly. They'd buy something new and feel good for a moment, but then they'd feel guilt later when they realized they were overspending.
So how can someone combat those impulse purchases?
One effective strategy is the 24-hour rule. So when you want to buy something, just wait a day.
Oh, I like that. It gives you time to think it through.
Right. Often, after a day, you might realize you really didn't need that item as much as you thought.
Yeah, and it can save you from buyer's remorse later.
For sure. And, another common mistake is not having an emergency fund.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yes, it is. People often treat that as a luxury rather than a necessity. So if an unexpected expense comes up, they might have to put it on credit.
And then they end up in a cycle of debt.
Exactly. It can spiral quickly. So I recommend aiming for at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved up.
Wow, that sounds daunting, but it's so important, right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. Starting small, even saving a little each month, can really add up.
Great point. So let's say someone is already in that cycle of debt. How do they start getting out of it?
Well, first, they need to assess the situation. List all debts, interest rates, and minimum payments.
That sounds like a tough process.
It can be, but knowledge is power. Once they know their numbers, they can create a plan.
Yeah, like the snowball or avalanche method for paying down debt, right?
Exactly. The snowball method focuses on paying off the smallest debts first, while the avalanche focuses on the highest interest rates.
I can see how both methods would motivate different people.
Right. And the key is to stick to it and adjust the budget if necessary.
So if someone finds they're still struggling, what do you suggest?
Don't hesitate to reach out for help. Financial advisors, like me, can provide personalized strategies.
And it's like having a coach, right?
Exactly. It's all about making informed decisions and staying accountable.
So to sum it all up, recognizing those pitfalls is so crucial.
Yes, and understanding that budgeting is a process, not a one-time fix.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And with some diligence, anyone can turn their financial situation around.
Awesome. And next time, we'll look into practical steps for building that emergency fund.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
All right, Alex. So we've really broken down the 50/30/20 budget rule today. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, what are some immediate steps they can take to start using this rule in their own lives?
Yeah, absolutely, Jordan. I think the first step is really just to evaluate where you currently stand financially. Looking at your income, your expenses, it doesn't have to be super complicated at first.
Right, so maybe just grab a piece of paper or, open a notes app on your phone.
Exactly. Just jot down your monthly income, then list out your expenses. You can break those down into needs, wants, and savings. And, don't worry if it feels overwhelming at first. It's all about taking that first small step.
So once they have that list, what's next?
Well, once you have your income and expenses written down, you can start categorizing them into the 50/30/20 structure. So 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings. It can be really eye-opening to see where your money is actually going.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people might be surprised at how much they're spending on wants versus needs.
For sure. And if you're finding it hard to categorize, that's okay. Just start with what you know. Maybe you can use an app to help keep track of everything.
Oh yeah, there are so many budgeting apps out there. Do you have any favorites?
I do. I think something like Mint is great for beginners. It helps you track your expenses and categorize them automatically. Then there's YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. It's a bit more hands-on, but really effective once you get the hang of it.
Right. I've heard YNAB has a great community too, which can be really helpful for support.
Yes, community support is invaluable. And if you're more of a pen and paper person, that's totally fine too. You could also use a simple spreadsheet in Excel or Google Sheets.
Exactly. So after categorizing, what should they do next?
After that, you want to analyze those categories. Are you spending more than 50% on needs? Or maybe your wants are creeping up to 40%. That's where you can make adjustments.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be gentle with yourself during this process. It's about progress, not perfection, right?
Absolutely. Maybe start by looking at your wants and see if there are small changes you can make. For example, do you really need that subscription service? Or could you cut it down to just 1 or 2?
Ooh, that's a good point. Even small changes can add up over time.
Exactly. And you can also automate your savings. If you set up a direct deposit to your savings account, you're less likely to spend it. Treat that savings like a non-negotiable bill.
That's a great idea. I think automation can really help make budgeting feel less daunting.
For sure. And then, once you've started adjusting those categories, I'd recommend checking in with yourself monthly. Just sit down and, review your progress.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to take long. Just a few minutes to see how you're doing.
Exactly. And if you notice you're still struggling with a particular category, that's a sign it might need a deeper look. Maybe you need to adjust your needs or rethink some of your wants.
So, building those habits is key. Are there any specific habits you think people should focus on?
Definitely. I'd say one of the best habits to build is to track all your spending for at least a month. It helps you become more aware of where your money goes. And that awareness is powerful.
Yes! It's like a light bulb moment for so many people. And what about books? Are there any you recommend?
Oh, absolutely. The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey is a classic. It's practical and very straightforward. Another great one is You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. It's motivational and really gets you thinking about your relationship with money.
Those sound great! And I think it's also about mindset, right?
Exactly, Jordan. Having a positive mindset about budgeting can really change your whole approach. It's about empowerment and taking control of your finances.
So, to sum things up, start by evaluating your finances. Categorize your spending. Maybe try a budgeting app. And don't forget to be kind to yourself along the way.
Yes. And remember, it's about progress, not perfection. You don't have to get it all right immediately. Small steps can lead to big changes over time.
I love that. And I think our listeners will feel motivated to take those first steps.
Absolutely. Just remember, you have the power to create a budget that works for you, and it can be a game changer.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for sharing all this fantastic advice today. I'm sure our listeners will find it super helpful as they tackle their own budgeting journeys.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. It's always a pleasure to share these insights.
And to our listeners, we hope you found today's episode inspiring and useful. Remember, you can start your budgeting journey today.
Definitely. Take it one step at a time, and you'll get there.
All right. That's a wrap for this episode of Prime Wealth. We'll see you next time. Well, Alex, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, right?
Absolutely, Jordan. It's been a great discussion on the 50/30/20ths budget rule. Just to recap, the first key takeaway is that it really simplifies budgeting. I mean, it's a straightforward way to allocate your income.
Yeah, and that 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings or debt repayment, it just makes it so much easier to visualize where your money goes.
Exactly. And, the second takeaway is the importance of adjusting those percentages based on your personal situation. Like, if you have high debt, you might want to shift more towards that 20% savings part.
Right. And the third point we touched on was the idea of tracking your spending. It's crucial to really know where your money is going, because that awareness can lead to better financial choices.
And let's not forget the real-life examples we discussed. They really illustrate how adaptable the rule is depending on your lifestyle and goals.
So true. It's all about finding what works for you, right?
Absolutely. And, for anyone listening, remember that it's never too late to start budgeting or to adjust your financial habits.
Yeah! Taking that first step can really set you on the path to financial freedom.
So, if you found today's episode helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below.
And don't forget to share this with someone who's over 40 and might need a little financial guidance.
Next time, we're diving into frugal living tips that can save you thousands yearly.
Oh, that's going to be a great one.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone.
Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.